Hello, welcome back to Box Room Books with me, Ray, and this video is going to be all about titles and how important is a book title. So sometimes it's the title, isn't it, that grabs you and makes you want to read the book. So like when I did my video on the Guardian's Top 100 list, there was a couple of titles on there that I thought, oh, I really should check that out. And if it would have been in front of me on a shelf, I definitely would have picked it up. So Life and Fate, anything to do with fate, I'm kind of interested in that. And I love the idea of like determinism and stuff. And then one called The Left Hand of Darkness. So as a left-hander and a fan of dark stuff, that definitely, yeah, if that would have been on the shelf in front of me, I'd have been picking it up and seeing what it was all about. So yeah, we're all about titles. Hang around to the end of the video and I'll tell you another reason why I wanted to do a video about titles. But what I'm doing is, so rather than me just picking from any, title at random, what I've done is I've selected the books in my own collection, my significantly reduced collection at the minute, that I think have got great titles. So I've picked, I think, about half a dozen out. The first one being this. So A.M. Homes, Music for Torture. And I've talked about this book before. It's a fantastically dark comic tragedy, really, this book. And I do love the title. And I think the title, Music for Torching, it just kind of sums up so this book is about sort of suburban rot. It's a suburban couple who have perfectly good lives. They have a family, they have a nice home, they're comfortable and whatever. And they're just bored out their brains. And so they first of all, they set fire to their house out of boredom. And then they just pursue this kind of campaign of cruelty on one another for the rest of the book, just for no apparent reason. And so I think that title, Music for Torture, it kind of just sums up that kind of blasé attitude to cruelty and self-sabotage and mutual sabotage that goes on in this book. Yeah, a great one. Check it out, especially if you like really black comedy. Next up then is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, one of my favourite books of all time, plucked out of my classics collection that my dad bought me when I was a kid. Why do I like this title? Right, so to me, right, wuthering, that word, is it even a word, or did she make it up? It sounds very much like withering, doesn't it? And it sounds like what savage acts nature can inflict upon anybody who gets in its way, kind of thing. So it just conjures up, doesn't it, the savage nature, the brutal nature of the moors, and being sort of exposed to extremes of weather on the Yorkshire moors, which is where this book is set, if you don't know that. Also, it conjures up kind of death and decay, and obviously it's a ghost story. It is, I think, definitely one of the best ghost stories ever written. It is it's about kind of a couple that are very cruel to it. It's a kind of, I suppose it is romantic in the sense of, the romantics, but it certainly isn't romance, like romantasy and all of that stuff that you get, nowadays kind of thing. It's very bleak. And yeah, I just think, Wuthering Heights, it just conjures up that the atmosphere, the gothic atmosphere of the novel. Also, I can't hear Wuthering Heights, I can't hear the title without having Kate Bush's iconic song and video, actually, in my head. And I absolutely love Kate Bush, and I absolutely love that song. And I think it's just a beautiful like depiction of this story, or adaptation, I suppose you could call it, couldn't you, of this story. If you've never read Wuthering Heights, do check it out. Absolutely. If you like gothic and you like ghost stories, and you like tales of unrequited love and that kind of thing, and people being cruel to each other, and if you like your dark brooding anti-heroes, not even heroes, definitely one to check out. Okay, next one is Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. Now, I know what you're going to say, but it's not his title, because it is a Shakespeare quote. It is from Macbeth. By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes, is one of the witches in Macbeth, says that. It also has been used, that Shakespeare quote, by Agatha Christie. There is an Agatha Christie, maybe a lesser known or less adapted for screen, one of Agatha Christie's, which is called By the Pricking of My Thumbs. Talent borrows, genius steals, what can I say? And the quotes don't stop there, because you turn in And we have got, sometimes I don't like this when writers do multiple quotes at the start of a book, but it's Ray Bradbury, so I'm obviously going to let him off. So you've got a W.B. Yeats, man is in love and loves what vanishes. Ooh, deep. Loves what vanishes. You've then got a Bible quote, they sleep not, except they have done mischief, and their sleep is taken away unless they cause some to fall. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. That's a Bible quote from Proverbs. And then you've got, I know not all that may be coming, but be it what it will, I'll go to it laughing, is a quote from Moby Dick. You also get as well, it's quite interesting, he does a dedication here to Gene Kelly. With love to the memory of Gene Kelly, whose performance has influenced and changed my life. There you go. Didn't know that about Ray Bradbury. Right, so what I'm just going to do now, I'm going to read you the opening of this book, because I think, the title conjures up perfectly that dark, spooky Halloween atmosphere. And then it continues on the opening page. I think it's one of the best opening setups in literature in terms of conjuring up an atmosphere, and in terms of also just the voice, right? So I feel when I start reading this, I can hear the voice so strong, and it literally, I feel like somebody's come along and took my hand and gone, Ray, I need to tell you a story, and they've sat me down and they've got me, and then they're telling me this story. I don't feel like I'm reading it, if there's any effort there whatsoever. So yeah, I'm just going to read the prologue, find out why in a second. So prologues, when I did my MA, I learned that they're quite controversial, just like semicolons apparently are controversial. Some people really don't like a prologue. I think here is an example of one that, works really, really well. So it's an exemplary prologue in terms of, just setting the scene at the start of this story. First of all, it was October, a rare month for boys. Not that all months aren't rare, but there be bad and good, as the pirates say. Take September, a bad month, school begins. Consider August, a good month, school hasn't begun yet. July, well, July's really fine. There's no chance in the world for school. June, no doubt in it, June's best of all. For the school doors swing wide open and September's a billion years away. But you take October now. School's been on a month and you're riding easier in the rains, jogging along. You got time to think of the garbage you'll dump on Old Man Prickett's lawn, or the hairy ape costume you'll wear to the YMCA last night of the month. And if it's around October 20th, and everything's smoky smelling and the sky orange and ash grey at twilight, it seems Halloween will never come in a fall of broomsticks or soft flap of bed sheets around corners. But one strange, wild, dark, long year, Halloween came early. One year, Halloween came on October the 24th, 3 hours after midnight. So I was born on October the 24th, sometime after midnight. So this has a really dear place in my heart for that reason. It feels, quite kind of personal. And also, let's just take this sentence, right? But one strange, wild, dark, long year, Halloween came early. There's a big thing, right, with editors of what do they call it? Cutting out the fillers. A lot of people would look at that sentence and they'd go, well, just say 1 year, or they'd say, actually, the next sentence does what you need it to do. 1 year, Halloween came early. Do you know what I mean? But, I just think that's a beautiful sentence. One strange, wild, dark, long year. I think all of those adjectives have a valid place, and so does that sentence, and so does this prologue within the context of this story. So there you go. But that's just, my take on it. I quite like, I like description. I like a descriptive, world building at the start of a story, like setting up the atmosphere. And I think, Bradbury does it particularly well in Something Wicked This Way Comes. Highly recommended. And the other thing he does really well in this book, I think, is the child's perspective. So it's really difficult I think it's different if you're writing young adult fiction. I wouldn't describe this as a young adult book, even though it is, you know, from the point of view of young protagonists. But I think it's very, very hard to pull that off, to like write a book that is accessible, yes, to a, you know, a teenage audience, but to adults as well, and to do that well and to do it convincingly. And yeah, so I think what this book also does really, really well is it creates a kind of a feeling of nostalgia. So I think if you were reading this as a teenager, you'd probably get something a bit different from it than an adult, in terms of it. Yeah, it just makes me feel really, really nostalgic, and I'm a bit of a sucker for nostalgia. Right, next one is Sombrero Fallout by Richard Brautigan, then, which is a story that the catalyst for this story, I will call it a story. I think it is classed as it's a long short story. You can read this book in one sitting, and I recommend you do. So the catalyst for the action in this story is a sombrero, is this hat. It is for some reason, a frozen sombrero. We're in America. It's not particularly, you know, cold or anything, but the sombrero is ice cold. It falls at the feet of three men, a mayor, the mayor's cousin, and just an unemployed man. And basically all manner of violence ensues, but incrementally, you know, not kind of straight away. So one thing I love about this book is the word fallout has like multiple meanings, right? So fallout as in it falls out of the sky, the hat. Fallout as in, you know, there's a fallout between the narrator and his Japanese lover Yukiko. They have fallen out, they have split up, but also you get this fallout in terms of like, it is like a nuclear fallout, because, you know, by the end of this tale, most of the people in this town are dead for some mysterious reason. I'm not going to tell you what. The police fail to come and intervene. You've got really bonkers things happening, like there's a librarian who gets both ears shot off in separate incidences. You've got the mayor at one point is just screaming his number, repeating his number plate over and over and over again. Norman Mailer pops up at one point. You've got just men in fountains of tears, producing fountains from their eyes because they're crying so hard. It's just absolutely bonkers. But it does keep switching. So another thing I love about it is metafiction. So the narrator of it is a writer. The guy that's split up with his, you know, lover, he's a writer. So he starts writing this story, doesn't like it, rips it up, chucks it in the waste paper bin, and it then takes on a life of its own. So what keeps happening is you keep switching between what's happening in the waste paper basket and what is happening with him, you know, remembering his kind of, you know, this lover that he's split up with, and kind of having all these flashbacks. And there's a bit where he just finds one of her hairs and he's just fixating and obsessing over this one single black hair that he finds. So there are real, genuine moments of tenderness and you know, poignancy, but also it's just absolutely bonkers, absolutely bonkers. It's a farce. It's an absurd, you know, farce. This edition has a foreword by Jarvis Cocker. So if you don't, you know, if you're not going to take my word for it, take it on Jarvis Cocker's recommendation. It's an absolutely bloody bonkers but bloody brilliant book. Okay, next one then is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. So you might think, well, that's just a name. Why pick that one of all the books that I could have picked and all the titles I could have picked? So yeah, very simple, just calling it Rebecca. But I think it's incredibly clever. So this book is about that. It's narrated by the second Mrs. De Winter. That is the only name she ever has. We don't know her first name. We never learn her first name. So she is not Rebecca. Rebecca never actually appears in the book because Rebecca is dead from page 1. There is a whole mystery around her death, which I am obviously not going to spoil in this video. But so the second Mrs. De Winter, who narrates the book, so she, at the beginning of the book, she meets and marries Maximilian de Winter. They have a whirlwind romance, and she very quickly finds herself married to this man who she sees as being in a different class, in a different league, as being, you know, above her station kind of thing. She kind of can't believe her luck. But is she lucky, really? Do you know what I mean? This Rebecca is the first Mrs. De Winter, and she very much feels that she is not fit to, you know, walk in the shoes of his first wife. Yeah, she feels inadequate. She's young, she's gauche, you know, whereas Rebecca, she gets this sense from every way that she's described to her by other characters, that, you know, she was this glamorous, you know, gorgeous, kind of sophisticated figure. And so she just feels that, that she can't live up to that kind of thing. And she's very, very clumsy and very kind of oafish kind of thing. But so Rebecca's shadow looms large over this story and over this narrator. And so that's why I think it's a really clever, you know, title. And this is another book that I think does a cracking job of conjuring up an atmosphere right at the start. So I'm just going to read the opening paragraph of this. Oh dear, it's been defaced quite heavily, this book. So I'll just read you, the opening paragraph. So this is, you know, like Ray Bradbury, another writer who does start with a description rather than, you know, going into the action or whatever. And this, I think, does, perfectly conjure up the Gothic atmosphere. It's very much a Gothic work of fiction. And if you've ever seen the Hitchcock film, you might be like me and you can't hear this without hearing the narrator in the Hitchcock film. Last night I dreamt I went to Mandalay again. It seemed to me I stood by the iron gate leading to the drive, and for a while I could not enter, for the way was barred to me. There was a padlock and a chain upon the gate. I called in my dream to the lodge keeper and had no answer. And peering closer through the rusted spokes of the gate, I saw that the lodge was uninhabited. So very much, if you like your Gothic fiction and you like mysteries, then this is definitely one to check out. More on that later. Right, so the last one. We are going from one extreme to the other here. So we've gone from just a single name, Rebecca, to, the horrific sufferings of the mind-reading monster Hercules Barefoot, his wonderful love and his terrible hatred. And it's by Carl Johan Valgreen. So I can't remember very much about this book because it's a long time since I read it. But I remember that I did absolutely love it. I know that. And I know it was really quite unique and quite remarkable kind of thing. So I'll read you the blurb off the back, So a picaresque, grotesque and magical novel. That's what The Guardian says about it. And then the blurb. So on a stormy night in 1813, a doctor is called to the aid of two prostitutes in childbirth. To one is born a healthy girl, Henriette. To the other, what can only be described as a monster, a boy, Hercule, deaf-mute and hideously deformed, but with the power to read minds. As he tells the story of Hercule's bizarre and colourful life, which leads him from the bordello of his birth to a travelling freak show and then a Jesuit monastery and an asylum, Valgreen paints a magical picture of 19th century Europe. This picaresque fable is filled with curiosities, but is at its heart an extraordinary and unforgettable love story. So it's interesting that the main character who's narrating this is called Valgreen. So straight away you're getting that metafictional, you know, kind of territory in terms of, you know, is this his own personal history? I did just flick back to the opening, actually. It does start with, a letter. Dear Miss Vogel, I would like to thank you for your visit, which has left me many precarious memories. I hope I answered some of your questions. And then he goes on to talk about genealogy is an uncharted area. So this is somebody, you know, trying to trace their roots. And I think this Hercule is Valgreen's great grandfather, I think, or something like that. And then it goes back, obviously, into the story. This was going to be a really quick one. So much for that. Thank you for watching. Please do give me some feedback. That would be amazing. Tell me as well what are some of your favourite book titles as well. And there's a challenge. See if you can give me a title that makes me want to read the book, and I'll go and read the book. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And keep reading. I'll see you next time.